Hello, everybody. My name is Sanj Kumar. I'm the CEO of ELRIG, and welcome. It's great to have you all here today, and there's a lot of you. This is going to be a really great conversation today, and I know it because I've got my good friends Matt and Jasmine online. But not just that, the topic we're going to discuss today, I think, is really pertinent and relevant to the community, the commercial life science community. So, for those who don't know me, I'll do a quick introduction and then I'll hand over to Matt and Jasmine. But I'm Sanj, I'm the CEO of ELRIG. And ELRIG is a conference organizing company that puts on conferences for the drug discovery community. And as most of you know, ELRIG is the drug discovery community. Um, Last year, we put on our largest conference, which took place um, in Liverpool, in Liverpool, and we had over 3,000 attendees at that meeting. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the arrows there. And that meeting was completely free to attend, and it was supported by um, the vendor community, the sponsor community, the commercial life science organizations. We had over 200 exhibitors at that particular meeting. One of the things that we wanted to do at that meeting was really understand what the challenges and drivers that there were out for this particular part of the drug discovery community, which is the commercial people. So we invited Jasmine and Matt from Strivven to go out and to do a survey, to meet with all 200 exhibitors and ask them pertinent questions about what their challenges were, how they saw the market developing. And what we're going to do today is go through some of that data. So I'm going to hand over to Matt. Matt, if you don't mind, I'll hand it over to you, but please go ahead and introduce yourself, Matt.
Thank you very much. I'm Matt Wilkinson, a recovering scientist and founder of Strivven. And Strivven is an intellectually curious AI marketing consultancy. And as Sanj kindly said, we went round Drug Discovery 2025, a festival of life science, and pestered many of the exhibitors when they weren't speaking to customers and asked them a series of questions. And so the plan today is to not go through the entire report. That's available, and there's a link to that at the end of this presentation today. But we're going to go through a few of the highlights and then discuss some of the actionable insights that we believe that people can take away. So trying to be as helpful as possible for your 2026 conference calendar. And so moving swiftly on into the first of
Should
these.
we just say hello to Jasmine as well,
Oh,
Matt?
hi, Jasmine.
I know you're keen to give us the insights.
No worries. Hi, Matt and Sanj and everybody listening. I'm Jasmine Guria Gray. I'm the director of Strivven LLC and have been at the bench for many, many years as a molecular biologist and now turned into marketing and product management over the last 20 plus years. And like Matt said, we had a lot of super interesting conversations at the ELRIG Drug Discovery Conference in October, and we're really looking forward to sharing these insights with you.
Thank, thank you, Jasmine. And everybody online now, this is just as Matt said, the purpose of doing this now in January as we clear out the cobwebs from our holiday period is to get ready for the 2026 conference season, which is already going to start. And there's real takeaway messages here. If you haven't read the report, I recommend you read the report and we can make that available afterwards. And at the end of the course, I am hoping, of course, to see you all again at a conference somewhere in the ELRIG world later this year. Matt, now go for it. Off you go, Matt. All yours.
Thank you. So in the interest of telling you what we're going to tell you, today we're going to be covering the increasing importance of in-person events, of being memorable, of having battle cards, of continuing the conversations that you have on the exhibition floor, and using AI for insights and personalization. And this, as most people do, we were started off 2026 looking at some of the predictions that people were making for 2026, and IDC went out and surveyed a lot more people than than we could on the exhibition floor, and found that 58% of B2B marketers expect event budgets to increase in 2026. And from what we heard, people are really seeing attendance at events being incredibly important for meeting customers. And so if you're going to be increasing your event budget spend, let's make sure we help you get as much bang for your buck as possible.
Yeah.
And so one of the first questions that we asked was, why exhibit? And there's probably no surprise here that the biggest reason for people wanting to exhibit was meeting new customers. And so you'll notice that the numbers here go up to 100% for many of these, so people could answer multiple questions. So this is nearly everybody said that they were attending the conference to meet new customers. And then quite a lot of people said they wanted to connect with existing customers, they wanted to build their brand, and they wanted to promote new products and services, as well as building partnerships and collaborations. And so there's a real sense among this that this is the increasing importance of the human touch. We've been through COVID. We're seeing the changes that are happening thanks to AI and increasing amounts of content. And what's really important here is that the human factor is increasingly important as part of the sales and marketing process.
Yeah, Matt, I'm going to add to that in my experience. I mean, I have, like a lot of people around this table, dragged a bag behind me and knocked on doors and gone in and sold to customers, but you can't do that anymore. The COVID changed it all now. It's harder to get appointments. It's harder to get face to face. And with the upcoming world of the web and internet, they can get hold of information much faster now as well. So they don't necessarily need that salesperson. So I keep hearing the term event-based marketing. And I think this is exactly what you're talking about here. They want to come in and they want to meet people, correct?
Absolutely. And I think it's the human to human connection is more important now than ever. And it will become increasingly important as AI and sort of digital channels become less and less trustworthy. We're going to need, we're going to want to make sure that that we know that there's somebody at the end of a phone, at the end of an email, that we can trust to have agency for us to solve problems if other systems can't.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to pass on to Jasmine now to take us through the next few slides.
Yeah, so with the reasons for exhibiting at the Drug Discovery Conference, I want to connect the dots with the commercial challenges that the exhibiting companies that we surveyed said that they faced. And what stood out most from our survey is that the top challenges fell into two categories: building brand awareness and lead generation, stroke lead quality, stroke converting leads. Think about that for a moment. These challenges are deeply connected. You can't acquire customers without quality leads, and you can't generate quality leads if you don't know who you are or what makes you different. The question we need to ask is why? With event budgets increasing and CMOs prioritizing branding, why are so many companies still struggling with these fundamentals of branding and lead generation? So if we can go to the next slide and sort of foreshadow the answer lies in these three critical areas: brand presence, competitive differentiation, and trust building. That's a really big one. And it goes back in part to what you were saying, Sanj, in the before times where people were carrying a bag and were able to walk into the labs without an appointment. That trust building was a little easier, and that relationship building was a little easier. And I think we're missing out on the opportunity of building that trust and that relationship at these conferences. So if we can go to the next slide. According to a recent McKinsey survey, where they did a State of Marketing Europe B2B survey and report, Branding is now the number one priority for CMOs across Europe. The report highlights that the CMOs are focusing on branding fundamentals of trust building and emotional connection to give customer clarity, consistency, and a sense of security. What we're talking about here is relationship building.
Mhm.
This
Exactly.
represents a fundamental shift in B2B marketing strategy because CMOs have realized that in a crowded exhibit hall with dozens of similar looking booths, and we'll get to that in a moment, and these exhibitors offering what looks like and sounds like similar solutions, companies get remembered, and they need to invest in distinctive brand presence. The report mentions three major trends. One on interactive brand building, becoming a two-way dialogue. Think that discussion in the booth. Teams are moving from brand-only campaigns to full funnel programs that combine long-term equity building and immediate sales triggers. And Gen AI, which we'll talk about in a moment, is being adopted for creative exploration and content. Ultimately, when your brand is memorable and distinctive, quality leads come to you. When your brand looks and sounds like everybody else's, we know what the results look like. It becomes twice as hard to start every conversation. So yes, Matt, if you could go to the next slide. We also asked exhibitors what they intentionally do at their booth to create a memorable and valuable experience.
Mm.
The responses were quite revealing. Nearly half focused on sort of a functional category, how compact the instrument is, or the innovative solutions for drug discovery. These are features. This isn't differentiation, and this is certainly not connection to the prospect's pain points. 36% emphasized trust and service. We're here to help. And here's the one that really caught my attention. 15% said things like that we still exist. What I'm hearing is that most exhibitors are either describing what they do or hoping their presence, just being there, is enough. Very few are thinking strategically about the impression they want to leave and that connection that they have the opportunity to make. And this is the conference execution gap, as is reflected in the title of this webinar. Companies know they need to be memorable. They know they need to differentiate, but when it comes to the actual booth experience, they default to a generic message. So if we can go to the next slide and maybe have a bit of a chat amongst the three of us, and what we've all observed at the drug discovery conference and what we see a booth, what a truly memorable booth looks like.
Please, and if there are any questions from the audience, please do put them into the Q&A, and we can try and answer those as we go along. Please.
So if you don't mind me starting, Sanj, it's I've been to quite a few conferences over the last year, and ELRIG Drug Discovery 2025 definitely had was a great conference, but I would still be struggling to really remember more than a handful of booths. It's really difficult to know, to remember. It's really difficult to stand out. And then to go along and actually have, what were the great conversations that we had? What were the great things that people did that made everything different?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I think is such a missed opportunity. People spend a lot of money on giveaways and takeaways that are fantastic. But what I'm really looking for is, how did it make me feel when I went up and I engaged? And what was it that really was memorable about the experience at the booth? And so, we're probably thinking a bit more like, how do we turn this into something a bit more Disney than maybe a bit more as a, shall we say, going to a website and just looking at a brochure? I think that for me, it's really, some companies do that very, very well. but they are few and far between. And I'm not going to name or shame anybody.
No, and we're not going to do that at all on this webinar. But it's hard, Matt, right? Because at the end of the day, we define the booth as just being a 3 by 2 meter space with a table and a couple of chairs. And marketing, who hold the budgets on this, they tend to hold the budgets on this. They have to spread that money across a number of booths, a number of events, and so it ends up with being this sort of plug and play type approach, this copy and paste approach, where right, you're going to the ELRIG drug discovery, and then you're going somewhere else, and we're going to have to ship booths. It becomes very tactical in that sense, right? I'll be honest, what ELRIG did this year, because ELRIG has a booth, and you may not have noticed it, we call it the ELRIG Hub, is we put a lot of effort and time into it, and it became a very interactive space. We had a what was called the Wonder Wall at the back, where we showed a live feed of all the social media chats that were going on. There was an art exhibition that was going on as well. There was also a coffee bar in there, and we had people coming up and using that as their place to be. What they didn't realize that was tucked away in the corner, there was actually a small group of people led by our sales team who were actually rebooking vendors for next year, because that was actually our sales hub. So that was our booth this year, and it was really successful, and we'll repeat that again in London this year in October. So what can they do, Matt, Jasmine? Tell me.
I think it's about being human. It's about standing out, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're a field application specialist or marketer, product manager. It's using your personality to make things memorable and having that very human and humane conversation with that other person. It's not about, can I scan your badge?
Yeah.
It's about bonding over the pain point that prospect is having.
Yeah, no, one of the old adages that I first learned when I first went into sales was people buy from people, right, Jasmine?
Mhm.
But you have to be human, but you have to be the brand. So you become the brand. Is that right? Is that what you're saying as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. You become that brand. Okay. We have a question. Do you have any data from delegates on why they attend in-person conferences, and any data on what, if anything, they find most valuable from exhibitors?
So we didn't interview sort of the attendees themselves. I don't know if you have any data, Sanj.
I can answer that, yes. Well, I'll answer that first. I read the question without reading the question, if you know what I mean. People come to ELRIG conferences because of the science content. One of the things that is a red line with ELRIG is that our science content will always remain the best science we can possibly afford to put on the podium, full stop. So all our meetings are about the science, because we know that that will bring in delegates, because they want to listen to the science, they want to meet the scientists. And when we get good delegates coming into that, then that's the people who the exhibitors want to meet. Yeah. And any data on what, if anything, they find most valuable from exhibitors. I think the feedback we're going through here, I think that's exactly what you're saying. They want to engage. The scientists who come to an ELRIG meeting very much want to learn about science and technology. They want to engage. They want to learn. They want to ask questions. But I think, to Jasmine's point here, be human, but also be a scientist as well. You need your scientist on the booth there as well to talk science to science. It's not all just, can I have your badge, and have you got any money to spend? It's got to be out there listening and understanding needs, right?
Agreed.
Yeah. Shall we move on?
Yeah. One of the things that was
We've lost your
striking.
slides, by the way, Matt.
Oh, so
Thanks.
let me reshare.
There we go. Yeah.
So one of the things that was a bit surprising was that differentiation was a bit of a missed opportunity here. And we're not necessarily talking about how do the booths look, but actually when we spoke to people, one of the questions that we asked with, how do you, if a prospect asks, how do you compare to your competitors, what information do you have handy? And most people had some generic talking points about their products. They didn't really have a lot of competitive intel about really knowing how they stood out in the market.
Right.
We had a few people that would have some data comparisons, um, but very, very few had sort of real named, sort of 13% had sort of named head-to-head page sort of flyers with specs. Now, that's not necessarily something that you're giving to the prospect or the visitor, but understanding if somebody is having a problem with one of your competitors' products, being able to know where you're strong versus where you're maybe just sort of table stakes against them can be a real advantage in those conversations. You're not trying to sell, you're trying to uncover their pain, you're trying to uncover the problems they're having, but with leading questions, with being able to understand if a customer comes in with this sort of problem with this from this sort of vendor, this is how we win.
Mm.
And with that sort of intel, you're able to differentiate in a whole new way. And that's something that that I thought was that I found quite surprising that teams didn't quite have that sort of insight,
Yeah.
and weren't provided with that sort of insight. And so that comes on to sort of our next kind of talking point, where really we're sort of suggesting people do come equipped with having some battle cards. And that isn't something that you're necessarily sharing. And we're definitely not suggesting that one should go out and be trying to bash the competition. But knowing how you stack up is really important. And in this sort of first part of the AI era, where customers can go away and create their own buying guides using deep research and looking at all the features and specifications that are important to them, understanding how your technologies, your products stack up against your competitors is more important than ever. Because if our customers are coming to those conversations more informed than they've ever been before.
Yeah.
And so we really need to make sure that we know where we win, but also having a point of view about what's really important when people are doing certain types of research. So almost elevating the conversation away from features, benefits to this is how we can help you, facilitate your research and really make a difference, whether you're, in academic publishing or in drug discovery, in the pharmaceutical labs, really making sure that you're able to really make a difference when you're back in the lab.
So Matt, to me, this single point is where it all pivots, because this can only be done face to face. It's very hard to do this by writing words on the web or by email. They can always be misconstrued. This is where you can use your listening skills to really understand the needs of the customers and then position your products, your company towards those needs. And as you said, never disrespect, never bash the competition. You should never do that, because you'll just lose trust and credibility in front of the customer. But you are simply acknowledging that there are other solutions out there, that they have their strengths and they have their possibilities. But at the end of the day, you're focusing on what you can provide, and you providing them with um, specific points that meet what you've heard from the customer's own discussion points, right? So that's what you're alluding to here. And again, that goes back to that you have to do this face to face. This is a conversation.
And what I'd like to invite people to think about is this is your opportunity as an exhibitor to interrupt all the online web searching and AI comparisons that folks have done. To your earlier point, Sanj, people are not being invited into the lab as easily anymore, and getting appointments is very challenging. This is your chance. You're right in front of these prospects. This is your chance to interrupt that online learning and give them really tangible in-person learning. And building on your strengths, exactly what you both have said before. It's not about bashing, it's about talking about your own strengths.
Yeah, great. We have another question in which I'm going to attempt to answer. It says, "What are your thoughts on the different appeal to delegates for large scale and more intimate conferences? Which way is the more preferred for the future from delegates and vendor perspective?" I think that's a really interesting question, because all this data is from drug discovery, which is our largest meeting. And I think there's a place for big meetings. I mean, marketeers definitely want more numbers of names. Salespeople want more names, but they tend to be very busy. And you're never, if I say that you've got 3,000 people attending, you're not going to meet 3,000 people. You'll probably get 100 per day or something like that. But I think those meetings are important because they have scale. They have a lot more going on in terms of the content and also the vendors. But what you have to do then is prepare, prepare, prepare. Just as I am right now going to SLAS, I'm thinking about people that I'm going to meet, specific companies that I want to go and see, talks that I want to listen to. That's what you have to do at a big meeting. The smaller meetings are just as important because they can be more intimate from a vendor perspective. You still may only get 100 people in a meeting, 300 to 500 people in that meeting. You still may only get 100 people coming to your booth in a day, but you've got time to talk to those people. You have time to talk to those people. And those topics tend to be much more focused and direct. So they're just as important, I would say. I think you should balance your attendee, your event portfolio. We should move on, Matt.
And so on to expertise-driven conversion. Jasmine.
Okay, so yeah, if we can go on to the next slide in the interest of time. We asked exhibitors what makes customers actually take action after the event. And the answers tell us exactly where to focus our energy. Expert consultations came in at 44%, live demos at 30%, executive meetings at 30%. Notice what these all have in common. They're all personalized, technical, and high touch. And adding to this information, there was a recent report by Gartner where they highlight that 73% of B2B buyers avoid suppliers who don't personalize. They're not just referring to personalization in general, they're actively avoiding generic approaches. But both Matt and I had this experience after the conference where we received these generic emails from several of the exhibitors thanking us for stopping by, and then they launch into their spec speak on a particular instrument or service.
Yeah.
It's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, please don't do that, because if I know I haven't been to your booth and I get a generic email, it's good. I'm not going to look at you again. I agree, Jasmine, absolutely. So that, Jasmine, comes back to that one-to-one. It comes back to that making notes, and it comes back to that remembering afterwards and doing your follow-up straight away, but personalizing your follow-up. Agreed. Oh, here we go. Go ahead, Matt.
It's very much, as you just said, Sanj, it's about continuing the conversation.
Yeah.
Don't treat we've got these names, we've put them into buckets as to who we want to sell to, and now let's start the conversation again. You've already started that process. Make sure that you've got a setup where you're capturing the information that you need to really do a great job about personalizing those follow-ups, so that you can really continue to make a great impression. And I think that that's the really important thing, is that in the age of AI, the most human companies will win. And I'm a big advocate for using AI, as we'll come on to in a minute, but we can use AI to really help us. But I really do believe that, as Mark Schaefer says, the most human companies will win.
Yeah, great. And I have a particular plea here, and I'm going to sound like the old curmudgeon online there, but please, when you go to a meeting, don't rely on lead scanning capture devices. Can you please take business cards? Can you please take a clipboard with a piece of paper and a pen, and can you capture business card and a stapler and capture the notes on a piece of paper? You can still scan if you wish to as well, but I would always try and put it on a piece of paper, clip the business card. Not all our delegates will have business cards, to be fair, but if you can get a business card, that's great. Or take a photograph of their badge, and just clip it to the piece of paper, and then use that. I find that to be fail-safe. The other thing to do, which I will recommend, and now I'll swing to being more modern, is use LinkedIn much more. LinkedIn has a great tool for connecting with people. You go to LinkedIn, you go to the search bar, you click in the search bar to the right, there's an icon, you click on that, and you can then scan somebody else's QR codes, or they can scan your QR code. So linking with them straight away. I think LinkedIn is probably one of the most valuable tools out there. And ELRIG doesn't sell lead capture facilities. We provide it as part of the package. But I know that I think we're doing our best to make that flawless, but it isn't going to be as flawless as a piece of paper, and it won't ever be as good as the LinkedIn capture. I'll give you that advice for free.
I agree. I think notes are super important. People don't mind if you take notes while you're having this conversation. I don't think it interrupts the flow of the conversation. Foreshadowing the next section we're going into, another way to capture notes is to use one of these devices. Plod is one of them that can record the conversation in real time and then transcribe it for later on. You know, some of us don't have such great penmanship, and so that is another helpful tool as a way to remember what the conversation was about and then personalize the follow-up.
Perfect. Shall we carry on then?
Yeah. I mean, as we're looking at AI as a competitive advantage next, one other practical place here is if you are taking handwritten notes, you can use some of these AI tools to actually use a photograph of those to then transcribe them. And I have to say that very often the AI does a better job of actually understanding my handwritten notes than I do. So, you know, there are a lot of ways that we can use AI as a competitive advantage here.
That's great.
If we move on to some of the questions here, we asked quite a few questions about AI. And one of them was about how often are you personally using AI at work? So surprisingly to me, there's more than 10% that aren't using it at all. And more than 40% are only light users. They've tried it, but they're not using them regularly. We then see that we've got about 35–40% that are using them extensively day to day, and sort of a small number that consider themselves power users. One of the things that was really interesting is that as we go through this, there's actually sort of looking at AI adoption is driven by structure. We come into that in a minute. But there are many organizations that aren't providing the frameworks to actually turn usage into a structured approach. And so we find a lot of people using technology even when it's not adopted, and that can put things at risk. It's something that Ethan Mollick has described as being secret cyborgs, one of my favorite phrases. And I think that's something to be really aware of, that people are going to be using AI tools whether the organization has approved them or not. When we look at what people are using them for, a huge number again are using them for generating text, often just as a complicated spell check. But a surprising number are using them for market and competitor analysis, meeting preparation, and then we start getting down to maybe 20 or 30% for creating graphics and analyzing data and reporting. Only 20% are actually using it for personalization. And I think this is a huge miss, because if I know that somebody has a certain role, has a certain amount of information, I can help use AI to put myself in their shoes and communicate to them better as they want to be communicated to, whether that's because I understand what's important in their role and using the sorts of persona that they might be. It might be because I understand their personality type better. And there are tools and things that we could talk about for hours, or I could talk about certainly for hours about doing that. But one of the things that I think is really important is that we can use AI tools to better understand our customers and to better communicate with them in ways they want to communicate to. And so that's really important.
let's talk about that, Matt. Well, we don't have hours, but let's try
Yeah.
and talk about that because I think you're certainly one of the leaders in this, thought leaders in this area. Now, does everybody on this call know that when you buy a booth at ELRIG Drug Discovery 2026, which is in London on the 14th and 15th of October, you also get a limited access to a software platform called SciLeads. And SciLeads is a huge database of all the life science scientists there are globally who've ever published. And normally you have to pay a subscription for that, but you can actually get a limited access, which means that for the period of the event, you can start to research the people who are going to be at that event using SciLeads. So 2 weeks before drug discovery this year, we will send out the GDPR consented attendee registration list. I do apologize. So that's the 3,000 people who say, hey, I'm going to come, and they say, send me a ticket. And we will send out their name, their title, their company, and their email address as well. It's all GDPR consented. You can then use that name to search Jasmine in SciLeads to see who she has been working with and what her publications are, so you can prepare. And that's one example of some AI that you can use. You can prepare using that. But Matt, I know you've got some other great key account management tools out there, for example. Do you want to touch upon those quickly?
Yeah, so everything from being able to develop synthetic customers. So you might want to look at, let's just say that you know that you've got a target audience within certain demographic of within pharmaceutical companies as one target persona. You can go into SciLeads, you can look at not just their email addresses and what they've been publishing to help you identify the right people, but you can also look at their LinkedIn profiles. Using that, you can then actually build really phenomenal persona and synthetic customers. You can also then add on to that from those LinkedIn profiles as well. You can actually go through and use tools like Humantic AI. And from that, then this is pretty scary. Based on what you publish online, these AI tools can actually understand a bit about do a bit of a personality profiling. So most of us will have done some kind of personality profiling in work, whether that's ColorWorks or Myers-Briggs type indicator or some other personality thing. DISC is a very common one amongst many of the sales training teams. And you'll be able to get that information about what personality profile does somebody have. And that then allows you to communicate far more effectively to that person. So if we just go to an MBTI, because that's probably one of my more favored ones, if somebody is more thinking than feeling, they want more data than the touchy-feely part of the conversation. If somebody's more big picture, they want to know what they can achieve. Whereas if somebody is more sensing or sort of detail oriented, they want to know a bit more about the numbers, the real sort of points of differentiation. And so you're able to tailor your message, your outreach, and prepare for those meetings in far more, in far better than we ever could do before.
Yeah.
And then there are tools that, taking this even step further, and this was something that Sanj got to see at the SAMPS conference in Boston in December. You can actually use these persona and you can create role plays where you can actually role play your sales calls. So I created a great example where I failed my own role play, basically setting that up in a tool called Udly, where you basically set up I'm going to be speaking with this person from this company. This is the part of the sales process. This is the scenario. You can actually practice almost a live video call, it feels like, and then get feedback as to how you're doing. And so you can mark yourself, and that those sorts of tools all exist. And so this really elevates us from taking AI as a as a sophisticated spell check and word generator through to a real commercial set of companion tools.
Brilliant, Matt. Let's move on in the interest of time. There is one very important point that's in the chat about GDPR, and I must emphasize that this is all GDPR compliant. Any information that you get from your customers, you need to ask permission, whether it's a piece of paper or a photograph of their badge or whatever, and you need to treat it as confidential. Please carry on, Matt.
One of the things that we found that AI adoption is really driven by structure. So we found that the majority of organizations, so more than 35%, have some unstructured exploration. People will have licenses to, a basic Copilot license at work, but they don't have any structure around that. And that's really where or even that they've been banned from using it. So more than 10% of organizations don't even have anything in place. And so for those sort of 45% of organizations or more, what we find is that typically adoption is low, as is sort of sentiment around AI. When people start using it and pilots and they're encouraged in sort of to use AI, what we find is that as long as that's done in the right way, and this is certainly experience of organizations we've been working with to help them with their AI training and AI sort of implementations, is that the more people use AI, the more they actually find there's a great use case for this here. It can help me solve this problem. And you start to find you create this virtuous cycle of being able to spot opportunities to help you do your jobs better, to connect with customers better, to actually be able to get rid of maybe some of the tasks that you don't, or to minimize the effort that some of those tasks take, while making sure that you're keeping the human in the loop and really making sure that you're able to focus on what's important. And so that was something that was really striking. The other thing that was actually quite scary, I think, for organizations that haven't yet put an AI policy in place or are banned it, is that for those that are not using AI and actually that don't have any structure, don't have licenses in place, about 50% of those people are actually using their own tools at work. And that's a real risk for those organizations, and something that we need to be very, very aware of when we're thinking about how do we set our organizations up, and making sure that we know that more and more people are going to be using AI for tasks because they're using it in their own lives. And so that sort of brings us on to our next list question, where really we can use AI for insight. We can use it to get competitive information. We can use it to get information about who we're going to be speaking with, and we can then use that same sort of information to help us better personalize our outreach. Speaking back to the point Jasmine made about sort of 76% of people not responding to messages that haven't been personalized, so we can start to break that cycle. And I think that's a really important point, that we need to be able to continue those conversations and make sure that we're trying to do everything we can to personalize them as we go forward. Sanj, Jasmine, anything to add?
I totally agree. I think we're in the situation now, certainly I know that companies are still deciding upon their sort of AI policies and AI software, but that doesn't stop an individual salesperson just trying out what's online. It's all available there right now. You can give it a go, and honestly, you'll be amazed at what it can do. I was amazed when Matt showed it to me in Boston. So definitely worthwhile doing.
I think the other opportunity for some of these large language models, especially if you create what Matt is suggesting, a synthetic customer based on their persona, and the persona being much more than a generic scientist of age so and so with hobbies such and such. Is that this can now be a fantastic brainstorming partner. As you're developing your follow-up emails, you can brainstorm with this synthetic customer. Would you respond more to version A or version B? It's version B. The response is, why is it version B? How can I improve on version B? And such makes it a great opportunity to augment your own capabilities as a marketer, as a salesperson.
Super. We should begin to wrap up now, I think.
Yeah. So we've just got a few practical starting points that I'm going to throw over to Jasmine to run through, and then we're on to the Q&A session.
Yeah. So after all the data we showed you, as well as others in the report, we're inviting you to work on a number of different ideas for your next conference. As we've talked about, personalization is super important. We've heard how companies can use AI to scale personalization. So we'd like to invite you to start small, Pick one use case, like personalizing post-event follow-up emails or creating more customized demo scenarios based on the conversation you had in the booth. Test your idea, measure it, and then expand. We'd also like to invite you to pivot away from the trade show sameness. If your booth strategy is show that we exist, or your messaging is innovative solutions, you really are invisible.
Mm.
As Mark Schaefer, the marketing strategist, says, stop this pandemic of dull. Instead, think about three things. How are you memorable? What is your value add? And how do you want to use this conference to start building trust and a relationship? What can you do at your next conference that attendees will still remember 3 months later? And then the third area is prioritizing strategies to acquire new customers. Look at what's already working. You've got data from previous conferences. If expert consultations are driving a high percentage of your conversions, then stick to that and fine tune that even more. If, on the other hand, live demos are resonating, make them better and more accessible. Don't spread your resources equally across every tactic. Focus on what the data is telling you actually works. So on the next slide, you have a QR code to the full report from the ELRIG Drug Discovery Conference, where we surveyed over 100 exhibitors. And we'd love to invite you to download this report and help us continue the conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you both very much. Please do take that QR code and please do join it. Please do continue the conversation with Matt and Jasmine. Do talk to them about the tools that are out there like Humantic and Sileads, etc. Xander, if you could also add into the chat the ELRIG calendar. I think I'd love everybody around here to know all of the events that are coming up in 2026. And also, Xander, who's our AV person in the background, everybody, if you could put in our brochure, that would be fantastic as well, so they know what we offer. There's one great question, which is way back at the beginning, and I hope the particular person is still there. And he's asked, you mentioned the importance of being memorable, but how do you best do this other than personalizing the discussion? Can you give examples that have stuck out for you? So Jasmine, Matt, any of you want to have a stab at that? Because I think that's to the core of all this, correct?
Jasmine, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. So it does come back to some extent about what data you have, what conversations as a salesperson you've had in the past that really stuck with the person, when you're describing your strengths, when you're describing what gains the customer gets from the pain points and from working with you, how you made them feel, and using those talking points as part of some of your booth messaging, as part of some of the handouts that you have as an aide-mémoire for that prospect.
I think my most memorable experience with trade shows was a company that I was very, that many years ago, I was a science and business journalist, and I got to know them through what they then did was a pipetting challenge. And they sold something that was shall we say, a fairly regulatory heavy kind of pipette calibration system, both for, single channel pipettes, but also for liquid handlers. And, of course, that sounds pretty boring, right? But people actually have to use these tools themselves. And so they use those as a challenge on the show floor. There's a company called Artel that's now been acquired by a company called Advanced Instruments. And I got to consult with them for a year or so. And, we had people queuing up at trade shows to take part in the competition. And the whole competition was using their own technology. And if you got a certain score dispensing liquids using a single channel or a multi-channel pipette, you'd actually go away with a little, with a gold, silver, or bronze award. So you'd be able to get sort of basically, they'd call it the pipetting Olympics, and you'd be able to go away and have a gold award and walk around. And there were seas of people going around SLAS and other conferences wearing these awards, and people would say, "Hey, where did you get that?" And that would then drive more and more booth traffic. And I think that's when we talk about being memorable. It's things that it's not just about having a great toy that you give away. It's something that really links to your core mission and values of what are you trying to get people to take away. Yeah. And so for them, they were really known as, the people that were really stood for, precision droplet dispensing. And that for me is something that I will always live with, in the fact that that was one of the most memorable things that trade show events that I've ever been involved with.
We're coming up to the hour. We've got 8 minutes, but I would like to try and finish in the next 3 to 4 minutes because I know people would like to go off and grab some refreshments, take breaks, etc., before the next meeting. So we have a lot of questions. I'm just going to focus in on 2, which I think are really interesting. But we will answer all the other questions afterwards, and we'll try and share that as part of the package afterwards. So Matt, this one's right in your street. Our team is stuck in unstructured AI exploration mode. Very interesting. And thank you for being honest about that. What's one concrete AI use case for conference prep that we could implement in the next 30 days?
So I think if you're looking at prepping for a conference, as you suggested earlier, look at who's going to be attending. And then look at, from there, how can we actually make sure that our outreach and our follow-up is targeted at their needs? So really focusing in on using that for personalization of your messaging to those people. The other thing you can use, which is incredibly helpful, is if you don't already have competitive buying, battle cards, use some of these deep research tools and ask, how do our products in these different sections stack up against our key competitors? Build me some battle cards that I can use and take with me. That's something that, a deep research task may take 15, 20 minutes to do for you, may take a little bit longer, but actually you'll be able to get a really, really good handle, at least on how you compare through the search engines and through what you're publicly sharing on the web, so that you'll be at least as prepared as any of your booth visitors.
Jasmine?
Yeah, one piece of guidance is to not accept the first answer you get out of the large language model of your choice. It doesn't know everything. It doesn't have the experiences that you have as a salesperson, as an FAS or a marketer. Make sure you push back. Make sure I've many times said, your answer is soulless. Think again, give me something different. So I agree that do your homework, use the AI to do your homework, but be a little bit skeptical with the answer, and don't forget to use your own thinking and your own experiences.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think this should be the last question. We exhibit at 6 to 8 conferences per year. How do you recommend prioritizing which ones get the memorable differentiating treatment versus a more standard approach? Now, I know what my answer is to this, but I'd love to hear your answer. Hopefully it aligns with what I'm thinking. But Jasmine, why don't you go first on that one?
Yeah, I think they all deserve
Yeah, there we go.
your work. These are all your current or future customers.
Correct.
Why would you want to give them less of an experience of working with you?
Yeah. Matt, are you aligned with that as well?
I am. Of course, I was going to say, of course, if you're going to put any special extra, effort in, then go for ELRIG Drug Discovery 2026. But that's, but actually what I would say is that just because you're putting, doing something that's memorable, you don't have to recreate the wheel for every single one.
Correct.
So you can actually, you've got to remember, as a marketer, we see our messaging day in, day out. We get bored of it very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But we probably get bored of that messaging, of that memorable thing that we're doing at a trade show, before many of our prospects have even seen it. So don't be scared to have something that lives for a year or more. I think it's really important that we realize that what's memorable can be something that actually people come back to year and year and year, year in and year out, because they want to see that, because it becomes part of what they expect.
Yeah.
And so those are really, really, things that I think we should be really, really lean into. Find something that's memorable, that aligns with, what you're trying to help your customers achieve.
Yeah.
And then really lean into it and make it as memorable as possible, but as repeatable as possible as well.
My only comment on this is that I think event-based marketing is so important nowadays. I think you're doing the right thing in going to 6 to 8 conferences, but they are an endpoint of a long series of actions where you've taken your leads down that funnel to get to them in front of you, in front of your booth, and every one of your events should be treated appropriately and with as much effort as each one. I certainly, as a sales manager or a marketing manager, I'd be very disappointed if I was putting money to attend a booth and it was all copy to attend a show, it was all copy and paste. So I think we're all looking for return on investment, and that's important. Matt, Jasmine, it's been fabulous. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody, you've got the Strivven emails in front of you right there. Please do reach out to them. You can also connect with me via LinkedIn or via the ELRIG emails on the brochures that you should have downloaded as well. I would love to do this again. We do plan to have another exhibitor focused webinar about, I would say, probably September time, getting us ready for drug discovery. So this is when I will meet you all again. If anybody would like to email or contact us afterwards, please do. Meanwhile, we will send up hopefully a personalized email to all of you afterwards. Thank you for your time, and together with some of the key messages. But Jasmine, Matt, that's been fantastic. Thank you to all the back office teams, Andrew in particular is behind all this, and Emily and the marketing team has set this up. But it's been a great event, and thank you very much. Thank you all, and Sandra, you can close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.